also. Okay, sorry for the delay. Okay, so last time we began our discussion of Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David. And their two roles in the redemption of the Jewish people. And hopefully, again, we're going to continue with this topic for a couple of shiurim, and we'll see hopefully how it connects to this time of year as well. So last time, just to recap a little bit what we discussed last time, that we established based on the writings of the Ramchal that there are basically two aspects in Avodas Hashem in general. There are two tikkunim, or two rectifications that needs to be fixed, that needs to be taken care of in order for the ultimate purpose of creation to be fulfilled. One, the Ramchal explained, is called tikkun hachitzonius, or the rectification of the external part of the human being. In other words, in practical terms, that means the focus of that aspect of Avodas Hashem is as far as subjugating the body, controlling one's urges, fighting the Yetzer Hara, and so on. It's a direct confrontation with the ugly part of human life. That's called tikkun hachitzonius, the external part of man. And we talked about how, in general, that's connected with the 365 negative commandments, which are telling us and teaching us how to control ourselves, how to subjugate the body, how to fight against our evil inclination, and so on. And we also mentioned how that was all represented by the mitzvah of not eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. That the tree of knowledge of good and evil represented the physical aspect of man, and the mitzvah therefore was to stay away from that tree, and therefore by staying away from that tree, that would have lowered and subjugated the animalistic tendencies of man, and that would have been the full completion of the fixing of the external aspect of the human being. That's all one aspect, one prong of Avodas Hashem. The other side of the coin of serving Hashem is what's called in the writings of the Ramchal tikkun hapnimius, or the fixing of the internal part of man. This other aspect of Avodas Hashem, we explained, is not about, it's not focusing on the evil that's contained within a person, and it's not focusing on the evil and the animalistic side of the human being. Rather, it's focused on uplifting the neshama, on empowering the neshama, and giving fuel to the fire of the neshama, and giving the neshama the strength that it needs to, at the right time, sort of overcome the body and uplift the body, and uplift all physical life along with it. And again, as we explained, the purpose of creation was that both of these things were to take place in a proper way. The lowering of the animalistic tendencies of the human being, and the uplifting at the same time of the natural spiritual tendencies of the neshama. And when both those things are done together, the result of that is that the neshama is then able to express itself fully in this world and uplift all physical reality and the entire body with it. That was the ultimate purpose, and these are the two sides of Avodas Hashem that Adam Rishon was commanded to do. And we spoke about how Adam Rishon failed, and we explained, therefore, that the death that came as a result of this sin was not just a punishment. The process of death and the resurrection from the dead is itself sort of a way of fixing these two aspects. The breakdown of the body is fixing the animalistic side of man, and that time where the neshama is in Shemaim, we're sort of rediscovering itself, is fixing the inside of man. That's what we talked about last time. So now we have to discuss how, after Adam Rishon's failure, how these two aspects of Avodas Hashem still were given to human beings to do, and it's still our obligation to this day. And we have to see how in history these two roles became became sort of the projects of different people throughout history. So right away, right after Adam sinned, the next episode we have is the story of Cain and Hevel. So the Ramchal, this is going to be, what we're going to be discussing right now is going to be based on the writings of the Ramchal in a sefer called Kinnis Hashem Tzvakos. This is not in Derech Hashem. He explains the following thing, that the two sons of Adam Rishon, Cain and Hevel, were very, very different people with different spiritual makeups and different potential. Says the Ramchal that even though Adam Rishon himself, personally, when he was still in the Gan, when he was still in Gan Eden, both of these aspects of Avodas Hashem, again, lowering the body, facing the Yetzer Hara and fighting the Yetzer Hara, and at the same time uplifting the neshama and focusing on what's good and what's holy, both aspects were given to Adam Rishon to do. But after he sinned, generally speaking, says Ramchal, even though every Jew has to do a little bit of both, but generally speaking, the way the world is, that each person sort of fits in one category or the other. Either the focus of his life is going to be more on combating and fighting the ugliness of the body, or it's going to be focused more on uplifting the neshama. And said the Ramchal, that's exactly what happened with Cain and Hevel. The Ramchal explains that Hevel was created, the neshama of Hevel was, his specific mission in life was to focus on tikkun hapnimius, on uplifting the neshama. That's what Hevel's role was. Cain's role, on the other hand, what should have been, is that his role was to uplift and not to uplift, but to lower and to subjugate and to fight against the evil inclination of the body, of the external part of man. So what should have been is that Cain and Hevel would have worked together, and each one would have accomplished what they were supposed to accomplish based on the root of their neshama. And Cain would have looked at Hevel as the superior one, the one that's connected more to the neshama. And just like the purpose of creation was that the body is lowered and the neshama is uplifted, so Cain should have subjugated himself to Hevel, his brother. He should have looked at Hevel as the leader, and should have recognized his role is to fight against the Yitzhar and to subjugate the body, to force himself to keep the mitzvahs as best as possible. And Hevel, his role would be to give fuel to the neshama, where then together would have fixed the sin of Adam Rishon. The problem is it didn't happen like this. So not only, and in a certain sense, Cain and Hevel therefore made the same mistake Adam did. That it's just like Adam, when he ate from the tree of knowledge, and he did not connect to the tree of life, he was uplifting the body and lowering the neshama. So Cain and Hevel, by Cain killing Hevel, it was the same thing all over again. That instead of Cain, who's the body, instead of him lowering himself before Hevel, his brother, and Hevel, whose avodah is uplifting the neshama, would have then been able to uplift Cain as well. Instead of that, Cain kills Hevel out of jealousy, and he wants to take over the world and so on. And therefore, in a certain sense, that was the raising of the body and lowering of the neshama, the opposite of what should have been, and the reemergence of the sin of Adam Rishon all over again. And because of that, the pasuk goes on to explain how Hashem said after this whole episode of Cain and Hevel, how the earth is going to be even more cursed since Adam Rishon. Because again, this was basically the reemergence of the sin of Adam Rishon all over again. So now the world falls lower and lower and lower into chaos ever since. So Adam Rishon failed in this test. He was not able to accomplish both of these aspects of Avodas Hashem. Cain and Hevel failed as well in the same way that neither of them accomplished this of lowering the body and lifting the neshama. Both of them failed. And because of this, the world sinks lower and lower and lower into impurity. The body is gaining more and more strength, and the neshama is getting weaker and weaker as the generations go on, till the point of where the world is so terrible, Hashem has to completely wipe it out. There's a flood, there's a dispersion, and so on. Finally comes on the scene Avram Avinu. And Avram Avinu decides to take upon himself to begin to fix the problem. He decides to take upon himself that he's going to begin to fix the sin of Adam Rishon and the sin of Cain and Hevel. He's going to take upon himself and all of his descendants to carry the banner of these two aspects of Avodas Hashem, of Tikkun HaChitzainis, of fixing the external part of man, of facing, confronting evil, and fighting against evil with all of his power, and therefore lowering the instincts, the animalistic aspects of the body. And at the same time, he's also going to take on the banner of Tikkun HaPnimius, of fixing the inner part of the human being, of focusing also on the neshama and fueling the neshama and giving the neshama what it needs to be able to flex its muscles, so to speak. Avram Avinu therefore carries these two banners. Avram Avinu has two sons, Yitzchak and Yishmael. Now we know that ultimately what happens is Yishmael is kicked out, and Yitzchak is the one that's going to take over, the project of Avram Avinu, and going to be the one that's going to, be the chain in the link of the Jewish people. But Avram Avinu himself wanted Yishmael to be part of the fold. Hashem already said to him that Avram Avinu already said to Hashem, that Lu Yishmael Yechia L'Fanecha, I want Yishmael to live in front of you. I want Yishmael to be part of this. What was Avram Avinu's thought? What was Avram Avinu's plan of having Yitzchak and Yishmael together? So the way it's explained is that Yishmael and Yitzchak would have both carried this banner. That Yitzchak would have been the one who's focusing on the uplifting of the Pnimius. And however, Yishmael would have been the one to carry the banner of Tikkun HaChitzainis, of uplifting the external side of man. Just like Cain and Hevel would have played these two roles the way it should be. Avram Avinu wanted Yitzchak and Yishmael to play these two roles. But again, just like Cain, refused. So too, Yishmael refused to accept his role, and because of that, thankfully, instead of messing up the whole system that Avraham Avinu began, he was just kicked out of the fold. And now Yitzchak has two sons, and the same thing happens all over again. Yitzchak has the goal is Yitzchak's mind. Yitzchak and the Yaakov and Esav also would be the ones to uphold the past and avodas Hashem. That Yaakov would be the one to carry the banner of fixing the internal part of man, the soul, uplifting the soul, and Esav would have been the one to carry the banner of fixing the external part of man, of confronting evil, fighting against the Yetzer Hara with all his power, and doing the best that he can to subjugate all of his animal tendencies. All was Yaakov and Esav together to build the Jewish people, and you would have these two paths in the Jewish people, Yaakov leading the banner of fixing the internal part of man, and Esav leading the banner of the external part. Are you hearing the static? Okay.
Yeah, that should be better.
Okay, fine. Sorry. Anyway, but again, the same thing takes place. That just like Cain refused to accept his role, and Yishmael refused to accept his role as well, Esav refuses to accept his role, and because of that, Esav is again kicked out, and therefore Yaakov Avinu is left alone. So what does Yaakov Avinu do? So Yaakov Avinu therefore travels to the house of Lavan and marries two women, Rachel and Leah. And by him marrying these two women, Rachel and Leah, these two women also, the offspring of these two women will carry the banner of these two aspects of avodas Hashem. And now the role, these two aspects of avodas Hashem of lowering the body, of lifting the neshama, fixing the external part of man, and fixing the internal part of man, are both within the fold of the Jewish people. Rachel and her descendants. This is where we get into Yosef and Yehuda. Rachel and her descendants, Yosef and all of his children, their primary focus in avodas Hashem is confronting the Yetzer Hara, fighting against the Yetzer Hara, fixing the external part of man. What Cain was supposed to do, what Yishmael was supposed to do, what Esav was supposed to do, Yosef does. Yosef does. And this is why we see that Yosef HaTzadik is called HaTzadik. Yosef's whole inyan in life was always to use all of his energy to fight the Yetzer Hara, to never give in, to always fight against every evil inclination, any animalistic tendency, always to overcome it, and to use all the energy he has to overcome that. That's the focus of Yosef, and that is the house of Rachel Imenu. On the other hand, the house of Leah Imenu, their focus in avodas Hashem is not so much about fighting against the body. It's not so much about fighting against the Yetzer Hara. The focus of avodas Hashem in the house of Leah is about the neshama. It's about uplifting the neshama. It's about exercising the muscles of the neshama. And therefore, it's a fascinating thing. In the perspective of Leah, and from the perspective of her descendants, the body is not looked at as the enemy. The body is not looked at as the enemy. Even the Yetzer Hara is not looked at so much as the enemy. From their perspective, which is all about the perspective of the neshama, since the neshama's ultimate goal is to overtake the body and to swallow the body up with holiness and to uplift the body, so Yehuda and the house of Leah never looks at the body as the enemy. They look at the body as a potential Baal Tshuva. That's the perspective of the house of Leah. See, Rachel, the house of Rachel, looks at the body as an enemy because their goal is that the evil that's contained within the body, their focus in avodas Hashem is to fight that evil. But in the house of Yehuda, the house of Leah, it's not about fighting the evil. It's about uplifting that which is potentially good. That's their focus. Because again, just to clarify, every single, when we're talking about the physical part of man, this external part of man that's the body, there is evil there. There's no question. Every one of us has a Yetzer Hara. But that's not the entire story. There is a Yetzer Hara and there is a lot of negativity in the world. It's 100% true. But if you take that away, even within the body, what's left is still potentially good and has a tremendous amount of potential of being uplifted in avodas Hashem. So like I said last time, that the purpose of avodas Hashem, these two aspects of avodas Hashem, is that number one, to fight against the evil that's contained in the body, And then when that is accomplished by by the house of Yosef, then the house of Yehuda comes in and uplifts that which is remaining, the potential, the rest of the body, which is now clarified and purified. So, so therefore, from the perspective of Yosef HaTzadik is that he always looks at the body as something that he has to fight. Yehuda always looks at the body as something that he has to uplift, and it's a very, very different perspective. A very different perspective. Because again, it's all coming from this point that the job of Yosef is to fight against the evil that's in the body, and therefore that's his focus. His mindset is on fighting the Yetzer Hara. Yehuda's point is not about fighting the Yetzer Hara. His point is about unleashing the potential of the neshama, and the potential of the neshama is to uplift the body. The goal of the neshama is to uplift the body, and therefore, from Yehuda's perspective, the body is not the enemy. The body is the potential Baal Tshuva. These different focuses in Avodas Hashem, these different missions in life. So just like by Cain and Hevel, it didn't work. Yitzchak and Yishmael, it didn't work. Yaakov and Esav, it didn't work. So Yehuda and Yosef, it worked. Baruch Hashem, they both remained within the fold of Yiddishkeit 100%. They're both tremendously big tzaddikim. But because of this divergence in Avodas Hashem, of one focusing on fixing the external part of man, of fighting against the evil that's contained in the body, and Yehuda, whose focus is on more of the neshama's perspective, of wanting to uplift everything that's good and decent about the body. So this caused strife and a difficulty between the relationship of Yosef and Yehuda. So therefore we have, for example, Chazal, already based on Psukim in Torah, that Yosef saw Yehuda and his brothers do things which didn't seem to fit according to the regular rules of Shulchan Aruch, and he told Yaakov Avinu on them. What was going on over there? What was happening was that Yosef, from his perspective, which is all about confronting the Yetzer Hara and fighting against the Yetzer Hara and doing everything you can to keep every single detail of Shulchan Aruch properly and never ever giving in to the temptations of the Yetzer Hara, when he saw Yehuda and his brothers do things which seemed to go against the rules of Shulchan Aruch, in his mind, that's completely the opposite of what Avodas Hashem is about. And therefore, he had no choice in his mind but to go tell Yaakov Avinu about the trouble that's being done in the house of Yehuda. On the other hand, from Yehuda's perspective, Yehuda, therefore, is never really so afraid of the Yetzer Hara. Yehuda is never afraid of the Yetzer Hara. Yehuda never sees the body as the enemy. Yehuda, when he looks at the body, he looks at physical life, he looks at a potential Baal Tshuva. He sees the potential in the world to be uplifted and to be fixed. And therefore, Yehuda is never really so much afraid of dealing with the Yetzer Hara. It doesn't bother him so much. The opposite. When he sees Yosef saying to Yaakov Avinu how Yehuda is messing up, and he hears Yosef having dreams about being in charge, he's hearing in that the same problem of Cain, that this, just like Cain, who was about the body, who was about confronting the Yetzer Hara, rebelled against Hevel, and therefore messed everything up by uplifting the body over the neshama. When Yehuda sees Yosef seemingly doing the same things, about trying, having dreams about being the king over the whole family, and telling Yaakov about how Yehuda is messing up and so on, he's seeing a potential Cain all over again. And because of this, they felt that it was right that they have to get rid of Yosef before he causes damage, before he rebels, just like like Yishmael and Esav did, and before he does even something worse like Cain did. We have to get rid of Yosef HaTzadik. And this is the turmoil that Yosef and Yehuda faced. So I guess we'll stop here, and this is just to give a nutshell of where we're holding in history. Again, we see this process throughout history, from Adon Rishon all the way till Yosef and Yehuda, this idea of these two aspects of Avodas Hashem, of one, seeing evil and recognizing evil as the enemy, and therefore confronting it and doing everything you can to never give in to evil. That's Cain, and that's Yosef HaTzadik. And on the other hand, the perspective of the neshama, which is not so much about confronting evil and fighting against evil in a forceful way, but the neshama's goal and its yearning is to uplift everything that's decent. And therefore, it's necessary to have these two things. One, there is evil out there, and there is decency out there. And Yosef is necessary to confront that evil, and Yehuda and the neshama is necessary to uplift everything that's decent. The problem always starts when these two roles become misunderstood and one steps over the boundaries of the other. But this is the concept that we're working with right now. Again, if there's any questions, then please feel free or to type in.
I gotta open up the mic though.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry. we had Okay, if anybody has any questions, go ahead, please. That's my.
Okay. Very good. Thank you very much. Have a good prayer. Everyone should have a ksiv v'chsim Torah.